Hello everyone. That tool you just saw me build is sitting right here at the back of the K&T dividing head. I made it to engage these dogs so I can take the spindle apart. It's threaded partially. It's very ugly, but it'll do the job. I only need it to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to take this spindle apart. The whole time I was making it, it was being very, very sticky. This thing here does not want to turn. So I'd like to take this apart so I can get at the lock, which is about a ½ inch ahead of my finger, so that I can free this thing up. Actually, I shouldn't have done that. I got to take this whole plate apart first. I'm taking you guys along with me. A lot of people were interested in how this dividing head was assembled and how it's put together. Or I guess assembled and put together are the same thing. So I'm going to be taking you guys along as I try to fix this lock. I have this back cover off. I have the... Do you mind? Yeah, I'm wearing sandals. I have this back cover off, and the tool, I don't know what you would call it, I guess it's a wrench, is inserted. I have a rod running the whole length, all the way through the spindle, to bring this wrench up against the nut. So as I untighten it, well, it'll keep it there. It's very gouged. I can't get it to stay in there otherwise. I'm not particularly worried about getting it off, or I guess stretching this stud while I get nut off. It'll unthread itself as the nut comes off. The thread pitches aren't the same, but I can always tighten up the nuts or loosen the nuts. I'll just have to be wary of that. Also, there's a little spring right here that holds this back cover on, which is kind of nice, but also, why would you go through the effort to put a spring there? You're not going to put a spring at the bottom. It's kind of weird. Got the spindle nut out. Broken loose. These bearings, I should probably replace them, but I'm not going to. I'm going to clean them up if I can get them out. There's the smaller one here, and there should be a bigger one here. I took the chuck off and the back plate, and you can see all these marks that were left by people milling with milling cutters and just damaging the jaws, or not the jaws, sorry, the spindle nose. These are the cap head screws I was talking about in my last video, and I need to get some new hardware. They stuck out way too much. They should be flush. So I did this to the back plate. I just flipped it around and milled the channel. I did kind of mess up at first because I didn't tighten it down whenever I first started milling, which was a stupid mistake. But I got the channel milled. That's all clearance. This guy, I still need to take out all of these screws, all these cap head screws, so that then I can break the spindle out. I need to take this top cover off because this is where the worm is that I need to take out so that the spindle can come out. It's nice to get this thing off. The tool worked like a charm. I did end up having to get my biggest 1 1/4 inch wrench and a ½ inch chunk of steel on a 3/4 inch tool to break it loose. But other than that, it goes on without too much of a problem now, which is very nice to see. And I just got to take this thing apart even more. The K&T Model H dividing head is completely torn down, and while I haven't really I found out what was wrong with the lock. Nothing really was wrong with it. It was just dirty. The lock, let's see, the lock is an absolutely genius design, and I can kind of see why people wanted to see what the innards of this thing looked like. This little pin presses down from, or the screw, sorry, this screw goes on top of here. It presses down on this pin. This, I don't know what you would call this here, this device locks in this direction, locks onto that. And this wedge shape expands this ring. Why would the expansion of this ring cause the spindle to not move? This thing fits inside of the rear of the worm wheel that drives the spindle. It's an absolutely genius design. I still need to clean this whole thing up, but I thought that was pretty interesting. 3 moving parts to clamp a spindle, and I just dropped that. To clamp a spindle, I figured that it was just a spring, but there was a spring that pushed it out that was stuck, and there was just a shoe, just maybe a 2-inch wide shoe that pushed against the spindle. But with this system, you don't induce any stresses into the spindle, only the worm wheel, which is, if you're taking a cut, that's fine. That's any stresses in the worm wheel, they're not going to transfer to the part. But if you just had a shoe that pushed up against your part, or your dividing head, spindle, sorry, if you had a shoe that just pushed up against the spindle, it would distort the spindle. That's an absolutely genius design. The spring that I was wondering about back here pushes on the part that fell and keeps it forwards, so that whenever you release pressure on this part, it pushes it forwards and unlocks or releases pressure on the spring. I think that that's absolutely genius. That's why I like taking things like this apart. This is the spindle. Fits in there. The bearings, they're not good. They're not as bad as I thought they were. That crunchiness, I don't know if that means that it's worn really bad or had some really hard use, but I can't feel any play in the bearing. It's completely solid. So is the rear bearing. They're still very dirty. I'm going to clean up the spindle as best as I can. I'm not going to do too much to the rear bearing. It's pretty well lubricated, and there's no metallic particles in the grease. There's no... Oh. Is that rust? It just stopped. I think maybe these bearings have had a pretty hard life. There's some steps, but with the 40:1 ratio, if you ever see a dividing head doing that, either something's wrong or someone's cutting a really high helix angle at a high speed. These are all the parts for it. Worm wheel again. This is the, or no, yeah, this is the worm wheel. This is the gear that the worm drives. 40-tooth gear. This casting must have been a really complex little endeavor. Why did it's just, there's so many little cavities in it. Why would you have these little cavities down here? That doesn't make a sense to me. All of these systems, right now, that gear down there meshes with this gear. I have the plate unlocked, and I can drive it with the output. I'm only doing that just to make sure that not a whole lot of my drag is coming from the output, and there's a couple of gears in here. I'm making sure there's not a lot of my drag is coming from there, and really none of it is. All of the drag that I felt, I'm guessing, came from that lock because it was all just dirty and stuffed with gunk. Anyways, I'm going to start putting things back together, start cleaning and putting things back together. I'll bring you back whenever it's all put back together, and whenever I've cleaned everything, so you can see the difference. You saw how hard it was for me to turn it, especially during the milling in the first part of the video. Hopefully it feels a lot better after this. She's all back together, and oh boy, that is smooth. It feels so much nicer now. Hey dog. It feels so much nicer now that I cleaned out that lock. I adjusted the backlash with the screw back here, the screw. If you notice, the worm is in two pieces. What's wrong? The worm is in two pieces. And so you can squeeze them together so that you get less backlash, and that's exactly what I did. And I've adjusted it so that there's no backlash here, but it doesn't affect the feel. Like, it feels so nice. And then I can sit there. Oh, there we go. There's a hole. Loosen up the plate so that the plate can spin. And do some helical milling. Now, if I do use this as a rotary table, and put a faceplate on here and use it as a rotary table, I'm probably going to make a new dial. One that just has 9 increments, because that dial is very busy. It has a lot of markings on it. It had not just beat up, but has a lot of spaces on it, a lot of markings. Call me stupid, but it can get confusing and hard to read too. So I'm going to make a dial that just has 9 spaces on it, because one turn of the handle is 9 degrees. Got the 3-jaw chuck on here, as you can see. The lock works beautifully and flawlessly. Locked. Won't move at all. Won't move at all, but just one little, it's locked, unlocked, and it's free. I am absolutely stoked. I'm going to be getting my mini lathe over here tomorrow, and associated tooling and some steel, and hopefully I will be able to repair that broken gear. Not repair it, but make a new one. That'll be the next project that I will film. This video will be edited with, I'll put up a title card. I forget the name of it. I'm trying out some free editing software so that I can make my videos nicer. There's some other upgrades I like to make that are inexpensive. I'd like to get a GoPro camera so that I could make a mount for here to be able to see work better instead of being up close all the time with my phone. And I'd like to get a decent microphone. I've gotten a lot of suggestions for microphones. I've seen a lot of reviews. I just need a little bit of money. So, and I should be getting that with an upcoming photography job. That is all for this video. Thank you for sticking through. If you're one of the people... somebody marked this truck. I didn't see that. Unless that's Those might not be center mark. I don't think those are center marks. Anyways, if you're one of those people that wanted to see this dividing head torn down, here is your fill. I didn't video the actual tearing down. It's very boring. It's literally just take a bunch of screws out, take it off, take the screws out, take it off, take the screws out, take it off. All you need for this thing is a flathead and 2 Allen keys, and you can tear it down almost completely, which is very convenient. Actually, 3 Allen keys. I replaced the Allen, I replaced the screws underneath there, as you saw. In any case, again, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content. If this video is nicer than my others, let me know. And if you have any improvements other than audio and the video quality, because those I know I need to improve, but as far as the flow of the video goes, if you would like to see it go in a different direction, let me know. Have a great day.